There are two sides to every story. The National Broadcasting Company presents the vivid drama of life itself. Broadcasting's original program of Mediation, the court of human relations. And now the man who has familiarized millions of people with the idea of mediation helped to make it a creative force in American life, A.L. Alexander.
Surely most people want to live in an atmosphere of mutual helpfulness, happily and creatively. The way is here before our feet, but so often in our relationships, the path is hidden by the tangled undergrowth of tension and misunderstanding and fear. That life is full of pitfalls and complications we know, but we believe as well that there are certain principles of truth which, like shining stars, do help to show the course which should be sailed upon the seas of life. We welcome the members of our board, each of whom has probed deep into the human spirit and has the words and the wisdom to define that search. Miss Fanny Hurst, Dr. Lloyd E. Foster, Mr. Norman Thomas. Now, here is one of those situations which we trust can be salvaged by clear thinking and sound judgment to take the place of the emotion, the aroused feelings, which now are in control. And here is the complainant.
Mr. Alexander and members of the board, I live in New York, and I am not a Puritan by any means. I feel that people should live the way they want. And I'm in love with this man.
I'm awfully sorry. I'm a little deaf, I guess. I can't hear very well.
Now, well, you can repeat
louder.
that. Just tell us how you feel about this man.
Oh, I said I'm in love with this man.
And you hear that, Doctor? She's in love with the man.
And I've been looking forward for the past year to a happy marriage with him. But something has come up now, and he's asked me to do something that I feel is unreasonable.
Can you tell us something about him? What sort of a personality is he?
Well, he's a very creative person. He's an artist, and well, he's very, very special, and I think that I would like to spend the rest of my life with him.
And you say that he's asked something unreasonable?
I feel that it's very unreasonable.
Well, what is this thing that's so unreasonable?
Well, I can put it very simply. That is, first of all, I love this girl very much, and I'd love to marry her. But certain things have popped up that
have they caused you to hesitate?
Have caused me to hesitate. And therefore, I feel that I would like to have a trial marriage.
Well, what are these situations?
Well, one is, with our problems in life, she feels that every chance she gets, she wants to run off to a psychiatrist.
Well, how do you feel about that? What do you think of psychiatrists?
Well, I think psychiatrists are all right in their place, but I don't think she needs one.
And so, because of all the questions that have come up, you've come to this conclusion.
Well, because of all the questions that have come up, this is one of the reasons I'd like to have a trial marriage.
Why?
Well, I feel that the problems that she has, if we were married, she can come to me. We can discuss them. They're trivial matters. Rather than running off to a psychiatrist, she can come to me, we can talk them over and settle them. There's no reason why she should run off to a psychiatrist every 10 minutes.
You think you're the one to provide the remedy?
No, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not going to provide any particular remedy. I feel that the problems that exist with her, in her own mind, she's been elaborating on tremendously. I think, in her case, we could solve our problems. If I could have the same problems, she could solve mine.
How do you feel about this?
Well, he's a very complex person, and I think that he's a very independent thinker. And I want to give him all the things that I think that he needs and that he deserves and should have, and I just don't see how I can do this if I'm emotionally tied in knots. And I think that it's all right for me to go to the analyst.
Well, what would happen if you went? In other words, do you feel that you'd be a real, integrated person?
Well, yes, that's what I want to do. I just don't think that I can cope with such a complex person if I'm not integrated. I feel that I must become that way. And I do want to give him all that I think he deserves.
Are there any other doubts that you have about this marriage?
Well, he's exposed to glamorous women all the time. He's in the theater. He's a dancer. He's tops in his profession. He's in, he has beautiful music around him all the time and fabulous costumes and everything. And I think that in order to cope with someone like this, I must be a substantial person. I just have to be.
And the way to become a substantial person is to go to the psychiatrist.
I think so, and get rid of any emotional problems that I have. I know that he can help me solve many of the problems, but the basic ones I feel I must be rid of so that I can be everything that I think he should have.
But what has that to do with the trial marriage?
Well, I think that's absolutely out. I can't, I just cannot see a trial marriage.
And have you ever considered that?
No, I've never considered that. I want to have the kind of a marriage that I can be proud of.
And what do you think such a marriage would do to you?
Well, I think that if this trial marriage would just give me more guilt, and it would make more problems.
And what kind of a marriage do you want?
Well, I want a regular, real, genuine marriage. I want one I can be proud of, and that's the way I think it should be. And
Well, how about that?
Oh, her problem, her situation about the girls, glamorous girls, I think it's a little exaggerated. There are glamorous girls in show business, but I've seen them all my life, long before I met her.
They make no impression.
Made no impression on me. I fell in love with her. I didn't fall in love with the glamorous girls. I see glamorous girls every day. I'm not worried about that.
But you feel that because of her lack of security and because of her insistence on getting help outside, that is, other than from yourself.
Well, it's all outside help that she wants, and she could settle her own problems. The fact that she worries about a glamorous girl is a problem that no one else would worry about if they were in love. There are other people.
You don't think any other girl that you knew would worry about that?
Well, I hope not. I don't think so. I think her problem is a little lack of confidence, which can easily be helped. She can easily forget about these things rather than exaggerate every little thing that she thinks about.
But in any event, you're saying that you're not prepared to go into a formal, regular, legal marriage as long as she wants to go to a psychiatrist.
As long as she insists on going to a psychiatrist, I don't want to go into a formal marriage, because then she'd be married to me and running off to some guy.
Mm-hmm.
well, I may not be clear about some things, but I really am clear about this marriage. I want it to be the right kind of a marriage. And I really think that you feel, that you're playing second fiddle to the analyst, and this is not
Playing
so.
second fiddle to who?
To the analyst. It isn't so.
But can you see your wife running off to an analyst every time she has to wash the dishes?
Can you see that, Dr. Foster?
This is too much.
Well, this case presents complexities, and surely this matter of trial marriage is one of them. It needs to be pointed out that when the trial marriage is experimented in, that the couple get off on the wrong foot. That is, there is not the commitment of person to person that this young woman wants, and I think is very important. I think also it should be made clear that we live in an age of specialists. People have human problems and tensions, and therefore we have psychiatrists and analysts and psychologists to help people. And one great advantage in the fact that this young woman has gone to an analyst is that she knows what her inherent weaknesses are. She can deal with them intelligently. And I believe that this young man would be more helpful if he were willing to go to the analyst and learn his interpretation of her need, perhaps also his own. And that instead of looking upon the analyst as one who is opposing their happiness, look upon him as one who may assist and may help.
Are you suggesting that the analyst then, instead of having one patient, have two?
Not necessarily a patient, but I think that they share together as to what her needs are. And I suspect that this young man also has emotional needs and difficulties within. Most of us do have. And instead of putting up this wall, this barrier between them, it would be much better to share deeply and to build their marriage upon that sound foundation of sharing and sympathy and companionship.
Then you're not opposed to the idea of her going to the analyst, and you feel that if that gives her satisfaction and help, that's perfectly all right, and you feel that if he loves her, as he says he does, he ought to marry a
I think it's a very normal and necessary thing. There are dangers, perhaps, in too great a dependence upon the analyst, but on the other hand, this contact may bring self-understanding and integration and make her the sort of person she wants to be.
Miss Hurst?
My dear sir, I couldn't agree less. I feel very strongly that this young woman is presenting barriers to this young man that if I were in his place, I don't think I would want to go in for even the trial marriage on two bases. First of all, the trial marriage, even in this day, is a precarious business. And secondly, this young woman has built up so many hypothetical barriers before she even enters this marriage. Now, psychiatry has its place, and I'm certainly the last in the world not to make a deep vow of appreciation and even reverence to what psychiatry can do. But I think that psychiatry works both ways, particularly with emotional women. And I think you will have a problem in this young woman which will grow and fester with the years unless she throws away this crutch, because I personally, as I look at her, don't believe she needs it, unless she is willing to enter this marriage on a person-to-person basis without this third relationship, which is going to, I feel, impede her thinking and tangle her emotions, because I don't think she is sick.
Well, Mr. Thomas, before I call on you, I'm going to ask this young woman a question which I think goes to the heart of the matter. Would you find it possible to marry this man? Would you find it possible to marry this man if you gave up going to the analyst?
I don't think so.
Mr. Thomas?
I just don't think so.
May I ask a question first before? Did you feel the need of an analyst before you met this young man? To what extent were you feeling the need of a
yes.
helping hand?
Yes.
In other areas of your life, you
Yes.
have had these confusions.
Yes,
Thank
and I'm
you.
much better since I've been going.
Thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
It seems to me the place of the analyst is very high, and to have gone to him may have been very helpful, and there may be occasions in life when it would be desirable for the lady to go again. But it seems to me that every sound and beautiful marriage rests upon a kind of a mutual confidence, a kind of risking something of your security on this particular kind of being together. And this you aren't doing, it seems to me, if you say the condition of marriage is that I have to keep on going to see an analyst. I do not believe the gentleman in this case would refuse necessary or wise medical care for specific reasons, but I confess to being sympathetic with the view of a man who doesn't want to have the question of his marriage determined by a woman who insists that she can only marry with the benefit of this particular psychiatric crutch at this
Mr.
time.
Thomas, that's the woman that he wants to marry, and you've heard her frank statement that she doesn't feel that she could cope with him unless she continues with this analytical
I doubt
treatment.
very much, then, there'd be a happy marriage with or without the, even with the analyst, with this peculiar feeling of insecurity.
Well,
but
her
on the
point-
other hand, I want to make it absolutely clear that I'm entirely sympathetic with the woman on the question of the trial marriage.
Well, her point is that the marriage would be happier with the analyst than without.
I still think that I venture to say that she may be mistaken, and that I am very sympathetic in this case with the man who feels that the continual going to an analyst on this one issue of a happy marriage hardly is the way to begin the marriage. On the other hand, I'm very sympathetic with the desire of the woman for security that can't possibly be given by trial marriage because of its psychological and other effects. I am sympathetic in this case with the man in that he thinks that a woman of the attraction and the obvious competence of the lady before us, ought to be able to risk a marriage without continually leaning on this crutch, however valuable the crutch has been in the past and could conceivably be in some future crisis.
Well, I would just like to say that I don't plan to spend the rest of my life going to an analyst. I have no such intentions.
Well, I think one thing is clear, that this is one of those challenging life situations with so many human and unpredictable factors that cannot be reduced, Mr. Thomas, to precise mathematical equivalents. But it is perfectly plain that this young woman is so concerned with the need for help emotionally from a source in which obviously she has great confidence, that it would be a mistake for this man, whatever his good intentions, to conclude that the mere fact of marriage could work a magic transformation. In essence, it's the feeling of this board, I think, that if the man cares for this young woman enough, and that is a matter for him to determine, he would have to accept the situation as it exists. We've heard the frank statement of this young woman, accepted on the question of a so-called trial marriage. On that point, the board eliminates that entirely. Now, the hope is expressed that some way will be found to establish happiness here, which can only be done through a real and creative marriage. That's the opinion of this board. Authorities agree that one of the first compulsions of life is the weaving of a stable pattern of relationship between ourselves and those with whom we come in contact. Now, here is a person who alleges that she is repeatedly thwarted in the attempt to achieve this pattern. She has vainly hoped that this would develop into a mutually helpful and rewarding association. Now, here is the complainant.
Mr. Alexander and members of the board, I'd like to ask, is it possible to live with a man and be happy if day and night he has nothing on his mind but horses and if parlays and show parlays and across the board and getting the bets down? I've tried to get him to give it up, but I got no satisfaction, and that's why I've come here today.
And what's the thing that makes you angry?
Well, the worst of it is that he does win big money, hits the horses big.
And what have you told him?
Told him unless he gives it up that we'll just have to part.
Now, what about this?
Playing horses, Miss Alexander, is my pleasure. She has her pleasures. I have my pleasures.
Well, this pleasure of yours makes her very unhappy.
Her pleasures makes me unhappy.
Well, she says that you devote all your time to horses.
And she devotes all her time to show business.
And what do you want?
I want her to give up show business, and I would give up horses.
You want a wife, is that right?
I want a wife, not a showgirl.
Well, now tell us what his interest in horses is.
Well, even if he should be sick or in bed or have the grip or flu, I've seen him sick in bed where he couldn't walk, or he could be in a hospital. He's dreaming of the scratch sheet and the dope sheet and getting the bets to the betting parlor or who came in first and second in the races, instead of thinking of medicine or doctors or getting well.
He wants to know where, suppose he were in an oxygen tent.
If he were in an oxygen tent, as I've seen him, he's still dreaming of who came in second, who came in first, and parlays, and who scratched.
Mr. Alexander, playing horses is a scientific profession.
You mean comparable to most any profession?
Positively.
Well, isn't there an element of luck in it?
Very little. Let's say, like a doctor, a lawyer, the greatest lawyers in this world depend on a little bit of luck.
Same with a doctor.
That's their scientific profession.
You know, when they take that knife?
Positively. Every profession has a little bit of luck. That is my scientific profession, horses.
Well, what makes it scientific? What's the basis
Well,
for your
you have to study horses from the time they're born. You have to know their pedigree. You have to watch their workouts, the condition of tracks, the weight they carry. All that comes into it. It's really a profession. It's a study for hours and hours and days to study them.
And that's what you do?
That's what I do. It's a profession.
And that's why you hit them big?
Well, sometimes yes and sometimes no. But still, It's a real scientific profession, just like every other profession in the world.
Well, is there any other fault that you find with this man?
Yes. He thinks every man you meet on the street or anywhere is on the make or interested in me, and that I'm interested in the man.
And is that why you wanted to quit show business?
Why, no, I want to put her in her place. When I call a spade, it's a spade.
Well, she says that you're inclined to be a little possessive, and because she's in show business, you feel that perhaps she casts an appreciative and appraising eye in other directions, and you don't like that.
Well, I like to put her on the right track.
What other complaint do you have about it?
Well, he's extremely frank to the point of rudeness, and I've lost all my friendships, friends, people.
Mm-hmm. Has he saved any money for the marriage?
Well, he did save $300, and I was happy. I thought, gee, it's wonderful. Maybe we'll get some furniture. And a week later, it all went on horses, the whole 300.
Put it on a horse. Was it horses or one horse?
One horse.
Well, now we'd like to ask you this question. We have to submit the evidence, and the board listens carefully to both sides, and then they submit a decision. Now, did you people agree to abide by the decision?
Yes.
What is it that gives you, sir, the greatest pleasure in the world? I mean, the absolute pinnacle in enjoyment and excitement and ecstatic pleasure.
The greatest pleasure in the world gives me when I can pick a winner. Gives me the greatest thrill in the world to see my horse win. It's the greatest pleasure in the world.
And there's nothing else? Is that just in sports?
There is nothing in this world.
You mean in life?
In life.
That gives you greater
It's
pleasure?
my greatest pleasure in the world.
A horse?
A horse.
Mr. Thomas?
Well, it seems to me that what we're discussing is the marriage with a racing form.
No, sir, marriage with a horse.
No, it isn't even the horse. It's the form. It's the bets. It's the parlay. It's the rest of it. And as a profession, it's a very unsuccessful profession if you can't even save up enough money in this profession to get furniture to get married. At your age, at the age of the gentleman before us, it's at a time when we live in what's called an affluent society. It's a funny thing when a profession so devotedly followed doesn't prevent you to get enough money to buy furniture. I don't think there can be any possible happy marriage between two people who seem to like each other in order to criticize each other. The man afraid of the woman's loyalty because of the people she meets in her business, and she finding no real satisfaction in the man because his talk is always of horses and parlays. It isn't even a question of being in love with one particular horse. I heard a story about the other night on NBC, so it's proper to mention it, I'm sure, about the Duke of Westminster, who's been mentioned lately in connection with art. In some English show, he was asked a question once popular: who would you like to live with on a desert island? And he said a dog. Now, it seems to me that he was loyal compared with a man that likes to live with a procession of horses that go through a parlay sheet. And I'm against the marriage on that basis.
Well, after all, you said you like to pick a winner, sir. You apparently have picked a winner. The winner is sitting next to you. That is a very definite win. Now, I think if this young woman thinks for one moment that when you go out of here tonight and you assure her, if you will pardon me to say so at your age, that you are going to give up the horses, that she's going to live in a fool's paradise because you're not going to give up the horses. And I think if she demands it of you, she is going to let herself in for something. It seems to me that in this marriage, it is either take him as he is and make the best of it, or stay out. My feeling is that staying out for both of you is probably the safest bet, because he has a problem with you. He has a real problem. And you are both far enough along in the ways of your lives. The house has settled in each case. And I don't think you could afford to enter a fool's paradise, even if this gentleman, which I doubt, were to say, out with it. And we here dislike the gambling angle just as much as Mr. Thomas has indicated. that it's in your blood and the stream is running fast. Watch your step, my lady.
I'd be afraid, wouldn't you, Miss Hurst, that the next bets would be how long they'd stay married?
I don't think there's much bet there.
And that would be a very unfortunate thing, because I don't like divorces either.
From a romantic point of view, this seems to be a very happy arrangement. Each would give up something. But from a realistic point of view, probably neither will give up very much. And it seems to me that this man is so infatuated with gambling and racing, it has become so habitual and ingrained that he will not give it up. And if this woman marries him, she must just simply accept the fact that she will take second place to a horse. And that doesn't promise very much.
Several horses, a succession of horses.
And horses are good in their place.
Well, while presumably people are free to devote themselves to any avocation or hobby, it certainly would seem that this case as presented to the board is clear in view of the extent of the man's preoccupation with horses and all the incidental attitudes that exist. It's the opinion of this board that the ingredients or the equipment as set forth here are hardly conducive to a successful marriage. In fact, to use the vernacular of the respondent man, in the opinion of this board, everything considered, the success would probably be 1,000 to 1 shot.
You might like to take it, so don't put it that way.
Perhaps I would.
We express our thanks to our mediators and bring this session of the Court of Human Relations to a close. It's been said that a proverb is a short sentence drawn from long experience. If a man deceives me once, shame on him. If he deceives me twice, shame on me.